now we've shown, the core functionality of RenterLink. We've shown, we've talked through how easy it is to really get the application up and going because it's very simple to connect it. But let's just show like a real-world example of what a campaign could look like. So, as we go through this, just understand that this can be any type of campaign that you want, but if you wanted to get kind of creative, this is how you could use the application. All right, so the first thing, when you're constructing a marketing campaign, you really want to make sure that you're defining your goal, and that's not revenue. Revenue is the result of your goal. So your e-commerce goals are SMART, right? So they have to be very specific with real numbers and real deadlines. You have to know how you're going to track that goal. And you also want to know what metrics you're going to track against, right? So are you going to track it against, for instance, metrics from last month, so month over month or month to month? Or are you going to track it against a period of time from last year and see how you do this year? So there's a couple of different ways to do that. If you're just starting out, maybe you are kind of throwing something at the wall. You want to know how you're going to measure that so that when you do this a second time, you can go ahead and have the ability to see the differences there, to measure your success. Achievable, right? So it needs to be challenging but possible. The worst thing you can do is set up a campaign where your team has never, never gone through that type of campaign, and you're expecting something like, a 20% return on investment. You've got to make sure that you're bringing your team along and making it a really positive experience. And that leads into realistic, right? So what can your team really achieve? So if you haven't added any staff, then you probably need to look at what you've done in the past and sort of make a reasonable attempt to push forward. But maybe you've added a new team member. Maybe they can bring something to the mix that is going to give you an opportunity to actually have maybe a greater success impact with your marketing program. And then timed objectives, right? So is it a single day period in time? Is it a 1 week? Are you going to do a sale for 10 days? Are you going to promote something for a quarter? It just all needs to be defined and ready to go. So we're going to talk about a campaign example. I found an article online, and we can actually, we'll just go and navigate to it quickly here. So this is specific to the New York area. So backup generators are now revenue generators. I thought that this would be kind of a fun one to go over with everybody. So really, the big takeaway here, and it's a pretty short article, but it really is just talking about, again, taking something that's considered overhead and actually, flipping it around and making it a revenue generator. So with this in mind, if you go through the article, you can clearly define, who you want to target within this campaign, right? So in this instance, the article is all about property owners and property management companies who can, for instance, if we take a look at number 1 down here, there's this idea of demand response, where, for instance, the power company, if you are using a high level of power during a peak time, they'll charge you more. So they've come up with a pretty creative idea to actually use backup generators to bring down that power load at those peak times. So they call this demand response, and there's incentive programs as well that the power company will put out there, and they can take advantage of that by using alternate power sources, generators. A second way is, so one practice that property managers have been doing recently is they are not unlike airlines who buy fuel in bulk when it's cheaper. They're doing the same thing with power. But if there's a difference in the cost, whether it goes up or down, they've been able to use generators to either sell power back at a profit or to use it more judiciously if it gets more expensive. So again, just really creative ways to use generators. And then resiliency premiums, right? So this is for both commercial and residential properties where, with catastrophic events such as, this actually all came out of Hurricane Sandy. There were some people who had the lights on and some people who didn't. Those who had the lights on, the people who didn't really want to be those people. So they actually now pay a premium in New York to have this resiliency premium. So if you look at these 3 core ways that property managers are using generators, it gives you an idea of, hey, maybe we could market to those folks. and we could maybe, sell them or, rent out, a bulk amount of generators over a course of time, right? So again, we want to kind of go back to the core of the articles, right? So who, property owners and property management companies, what are we going to promote? We're going to promote generators, and where? In New York City. We also want to identify a time frame, right? Because we want these to be SMART goals and SMART campaigns. So, to me, it makes sense to do something on a quarterly basis and see which message sticks better, right? So taking that into mind, when I was looking at this, it made more sense that the demand response, so the peak periods, it might be a good idea to market around a message like that during December through February, some of the colder months. For the sellback, pre-purchase electricity, this might make some sense around June or August, where maybe they're planning for that. And resiliency premiums, most folks start to move in May. So if you can get that message out to these property managers in advance of when they're setting up their marketing, then that would probably be a pretty good time frame. Okay, so then now we've got our campaign concept going, right? So we want to start thinking about, all right, how do we get eyeballs to our campaign? How are we going to do this thing? And again, it comes back to this custom URL, right? So we already walked through this. Here's how you would set it up, and then I've gone ahead and chosen generator. So then you want to create useful content. So we're going to kind of dive into some kind of fun tools. And again, we're taking a really deep dive here. So this is a departure from from probably anything that you've seen on a demo with Lynn before. But to create useful content, you need to understand what's actually happening on the internet. It's not necessarily what you think or what somebody else thinks your campaign should be. It should be based on cold hard facts on what is actually happening out there online. So there's a lot of tools out there that folks are using, and one of them is called Answer the Public. Don't freak out. This guy's a little bit weird. I personally think they put him here to make sure that you're actually querying as quickly as possible, because he kind of freaks everybody out. But the whole point behind this website is it's an aggregator of questions that is happening live across the internet. As we pull up generators, we've got our keyword. We can go in here, and they've got a nice little visualization based upon questions. So why, how, are, will, who, which generators are quiet? That's a pretty interesting question. So if you know that that's actually occurring and people are Googling that specific question, a really nice way to set up your campaign is to do something about answering that question, right? So again, it's credible content that people are paying attention to and they're already searching for. So if you can leverage all your work to actually create something, again, that people are looking for, you're going to go a lot further in your campaign. In addition to questions, there's also prepositions. So is, without, generators without motors. I don't know who's Googling that, but okay. Generators without gas, maybe that's electric generators. So just, again, interesting things that people are Googling that you can start to leverage towards your campaign. So for instance, if we take it away from generators and we talk about boots, for instance, you might, in your boot company, maybe the questions that you're seeing is, what's the latest fashion in boots, right? So maybe you would write an article on that, what is the latest fashion and what boots you should be looking for, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the nice things about Answer the Public is that they know that this is a little bit hard to read, so they do give you the ability to just look at the data. They've just got some fancy things in here. Anyway, this is a site that's really useful, and again, so I encourage you to kind of look to these aggregators of actual content online to help develop your campaign. Okay, so going back to our campaign, right now we've been able to identify what are some of these questions that we want to answer when we create our content. So now we've got an idea around content. So now let's go ahead and what's the next step? We need to get keywords, right? Because if you don't have keywords that are effective, you're essentially, it's sort of like how do you get found if you don't have keywords that people are actually, looking for? Trust me on this one, it's very difficult to get found unless you're using the correct keywords. So one thing I wanted to do then is hop over to AdWords and just take a look at the keyword planner, right? So A couple things on AdWords: you need to have a campaign to actually access the Keyword Planner tool. Doesn't mean you need to buy any advertising, but you do need to log in. So you just come in here and start using Keyword Planner. Okay. Sometimes even Google has a hard time, huh? All right, so we want to come over here to find new keywords and get search volume data. And we're just going to drill down into this first one. So search for new keywords using a phrase, website, or category. So here, for example, we want to say generators, right? And we'll just leave it at generator. When you add the S, it does actually take that into account. And then we probably want to select a category. I'm going to go ahead and say real estate, since we're looking at property management. And I'm going to keep it there because I want to have a broader search than not. And you can see that I've actually already come in here and run this search. But you can target by a location. So if you just start to enter, we know it's New York City, right? So we want New York, the city. And then you can actually continue to drill down, or you can add nearby. But because the way that this article was talked about, we want to keep it in New York just to make it as effective as possible. So we'll go ahead and save the location. We're going to go ahead and select English as a language, but you can select other languages. Go ahead and save. We want to just select Google, right? We don't want to know what their search partners are using. And then here's a really interesting thing. So for instance, we want to run this campaign from this year in December to February. So if I look last year, I will basically want to start at December, because remember, we want to look at things that in parallel, right? So we'll go ahead and have December from last year to February. And so we can go ahead and save that. So now we've got like a nice finite set of parameters for our keyword search. We're going to go ahead and click on Get Ideas. And so what's going to come up here is a lot of keywords that we can take a look at. One of the important things that you want to do when you're looking at keywords that you want to use for content is you want to get the most bang for your buck, but you also want to make sure that you're not in a situation where it's just unattainable. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and sort by average monthly searches, because number one, we want to know that people are actually searching on a keyword. So this is pretty good. There's 100 to 1,000 searches occurring in the New York area per month. So that's pretty good. But this is a really high competition keyword. So generator rental actually may not be a keyword that you want to use in your content, because it's going to be very difficult to compete with everybody out there who's already focused on that keyword, right? So you may actually want to drop down into where you still have a high number of searches, and this data set's not really working well for me. It looks like the only two that are really worthy of focusing on are actually pretty high. So then maybe what I'll do is change my keyword search to rent generator and see what else comes up.
Okay. Hey, Jeanette, sorry, not trying to rush you, but we got 3 minutes left on this webinar.
Okay. All right, so let's hop back over. Thank you, Jill, for the time. We're almost done. Oops. Okay. So anyways, once you've identified your keyword, right? So now you've got your keyword, you've got your content. You need to go ahead and post all of this content somewhere. So again, getting back to those landing pages, augmenting it through keywords, and the SEO is basically just keywords being layered throughout elements of your page on that landing page. So it would be in the URL string of the page, it would be in the title string of the page, it would be in the subtitle and the content. And then again, with blogs, you have tags that you can use for keywords. And again, search optimization really kind of falls into where is the blog hosted. Is it hosted on a website, so driving traffic there. LinkedIn articles, you can use keywords, hashtags, and advertising. Facebook posts, same types of things, right? So you might have a hashtag of property manager, and so any of that content that you distribute throughout LinkedIn or Facebook, if somebody were to go in and actually use the search term property manager, your content would display. Okay. So embedding that URL, right? So we've got our content, we've got our keywords, we know where we're going to place them. Now we want to go ahead and place that, that custom URL within the content on your screen or on the location. So now you can credibly write an article that is specifically targeted to a property manager in the New York area on how to actually take what used to be overhead concept, right, of generators, like they have to have them, to, wow, there's some opportunities here for you guys to make money, and I'm going to be the person who actually exposes that to you, and so hopefully you'll actually work with me to acquire the generators that you're going to use to actually build your revenue.